My sister had a ring like that, said the waitress to the Mafia boss. What how this ring is? Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Emma had always kept her head down and her mouth shut while working at the upscale restaurant in Midtown Manhattan. She had learned quickly that survival meant being invisible, especially in a world where power and privilege ruled. But tonight, as she poured wine for a VIP table, something was different. Her hand trembled slightly as she set the glass down in front of Dante Romano, the youngest Don of the Romano family. His dark eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to stop around them. The ring on his finger caught her attention, and an unexpected sense of familiarity surged through her. The ring was stunning. Two intertwining bands of platinum with a massive diamond centerpiece, the kind of luxury she had never imagined, and yet it was so familiar. My sister had a ring like that, she blurted out before she could stop herself. Dante looked up at her, his gaze intense, his expression unreadable. She froze. He had barely noticed her before, just another waitress among many, but now, his attention was fully on her. His sharp jawline tensed as he studied her, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Excuse me," he asked, his voice low, commanding, yet tinged with something else, curiosity. Emma's heart raced, but she quickly recovered. "I just meant the ring. It reminds me of the one my sister had. The one she wore before she passed away," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. Dante didn't say anything at first. He merely raised an eyebrow, his dark eyes still locked on hers. It felt like he could see straight through her, as though he could hear the unspoken words that lingered in the air between them. Emma quickly looked away, trying to avoid his penetrating gaze, but it was too late. Something had shifted in the room. Something had shifted inside her. "Your sister, huh?" Dante said, his voice quieter now. He seemed to be studying her, taking in every detail, the slight tremor in her hands, the way her face flushed with embarrassment. "What happened to her?" Emma swallowed hard, fighting back the lump in her throat. "She died. A few years ago. In a car accident." She could feel the familiar sting of grief building up in her chest, but she quickly pushed it down. "I never got the chance to give her the ring back." Dante leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping lightly on the glass of wine she had just poured for him. "It seems like a heavy burden to carry," he said. Emma wasn't sure if he was talking about the ring, her sister, or something else entirely. But it didn't matter. She could feel the walls around her heart slowly beginning to crack, and she hated herself for it. She was just a waitress. She had no right to get caught up in his world. "I'll go get your next bottle of wine," Emma muttered, quickly turning to leave the table. But Dante's voice stopped her before she could take a step. "Wait." She turned back to him, her pulse racing. "You've been through something, haven't you?" he asked, his voice soft, almost vulnerable. "I know what it's like to lose someone you care about." Emma opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. She had never expected a Mafia boss, especially one as cold and calculating as Dante Romano, to show any hint of emotion, let alone empathy. Yet, here he was, offering her an unexpected kindness. The moment hung in the air between them, charged with something she couldn't explain. Emma had never believed in fate or destiny, but for the first time, she wondered if perhaps this moment was more than just a coincidence. "I'm sorry for your loss," Dante added, his voice low but sincere. Emma nodded quickly, unsure of how to respond. She wasn't used to kindness from people like him, people with power, with wealth. But there was something in the way he looked at her now, something different. She had always seen him as untouchable, a man who ruled with fear and power. But in that moment, he seemed human. "Thank you," she whispered, feeling the weight of the words in her chest. Dante gave her a small nod, his gaze lingering on her for a moment longer before he returned to his conversation with his companions. Emma quickly turned and walked away, her mind racing. What had just happened? Why had he been so kind? She couldn't stop thinking about the way he had looked at her, the way he had said those simple words. It wasn't much, but for Emma, it meant more than she could explain. As she reached the bar to fetch the next bottle of wine, She couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change. My sister had a ring like that, said the waitress to the Mafia boss. What how this ring is? Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Emma couldn't shake the moment that had passed between her and Dante Romano. As she moved around the restaurant, her thoughts kept returning to the brief conversation they had shared. It was so simple, yet it had shaken her to her core. She was just a waitress, and he was a mafia boss. He had no reason to care about her life or her grief, yet something about his words felt different. It wasn't just a token of sympathy. It was as if he truly understood. It was unsettling. Later that night, as she cleaned the silverware and wiped down the counters, Emma found herself thinking more about Dante. She had seen him countless times before, always surrounded by his bodyguards, always sitting at the head of the table like a king in his domain. He had never looked at her like that before, with such intensity, with such quiet recognition. But it wasn't just the way he had looked at her. It was his words. I know what it's like to lose someone you care about. In all her years of working at the restaurant, she had never heard him speak so vulnerably. It made her wonder, what had shaped him? What was his story? Was it possible that the ruthless mafia boss she had always feared was, in fact, just as human as everyone else? But then, she quickly reminded herself of the reality. Dante was no ordinary man. He had blood on his hands, and he had built his empire on fear, manipulation, and violence. No matter how kind his words had been, he was still a dangerous man. The very thought of getting too close to him sent shivers down her spine. But there was no denying the pull. For the first time in her life, Emma felt something more than fear when she saw him. She felt curiosity. She felt a strange, unexplainable connection. As the night wore on, Emma couldn't stop thinking about him. His presence in the restaurant had always been imposing, yet now, it felt different. She couldn't help but wonder if their brief interaction was more than just a fluke. She had always believed that people like Dante lived in a world of their own, one that she would never understand, never be a part of. But in that fleeting moment, as their eyes had met, something inside her had shifted. The next day, Dante returned to the restaurant, just as he always did. He was seated at his usual table, surrounded by his entourage. But this time, Emma couldn't help but notice the way he looked at her. It was different. He wasn't just observing her as he had before. Now, it was as if he was studying her, trying to figure out something about her. She tried to ignore the sensation in her chest as she walked past his table, but it was impossible. Her heart raced as their eyes met once more. Emma, Dante said, his voice low, almost like a command. She froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. Yes, Mr. Romano, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. I'm sorry about your sister, he said, his tone sincere. It's never easy to lose someone close to you. Emma swallowed hard. She wasn't sure what to say. It wasn't as if she wanted to talk about her sister. The wound was still too fresh. But somehow, his words felt different than the usual sympathy she had received from strangers. Thank you, she said quietly, fighting back the lump in her throat. She could feel the weight of his gaze. But she couldn't bring herself to look away. If you need anything, Dante continued, don't hesitate to ask. His voice was calm, but there was a subtle edge to it that made Emma's heart skip a beat. I'll be fine, she replied quickly, trying to maintain her composure. But deep down, she wasn't sure anymore. She wasn't sure she would ever be fine. As the evening wore on, Emma couldn't get Dante's words out of her mind. His offer had been so unexpected. He had no reason to be kind to her, no reason to offer help. She was just a waitress. Yet, he had spoken to her like she mattered. She couldn't help but wonder what his true intentions were. Was he genuinely trying to be kind, or was there something else at play? There was a storm brewing inside her, a whirlwind of emotions that she couldn't quite make sense of. She had spent her entire life trying to remain invisible, but now, after that one moment with Dante, it felt like the walls she had so carefully built around herself were beginning to crumble. Emma couldn't deny it any longer. She was drawn to him. She didn't know why, and she didn't understand it, but she couldn't ignore the pull. As she walked home that night, she couldn't stop thinking about Dante. He was more than just a powerful, dangerous man. He was someone who had shown her an unexpected kindness, a kindness that, for some reason, she couldn't shake. But as much as she wanted to get closer to him, she knew the risks. She couldn't let herself fall for him. She was just a waitress. And he was a mafia boss. There was no future in it. Yet, as the days passed and their paths continued to cross, Emma couldn't help but wonder, what if there was more to him than the monster everyone believed him to be? My sister had a ring like that, said the waitress to the mafia boss. What how this ring is? Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The following week, Emma tried to avoid looking at Dante Romano whenever he came into the restaurant. It wasn't that she didn't want to see him. It was that she couldn't stop thinking about him. Every glance felt like it was loaded with meaning, and his eyes always seemed to pierce through her, reading something she didn't want him to know. She had never allowed herself to feel this way about anyone, especially not someone like him. But despite her best efforts, she found herself seeking his table whenever she was working. She told herself it was just because she was assigned to VIP tables, but deep down, she knew it was more than that. Something about Dante called to her. Maybe it was the gentleness he showed when they spoke, or maybe it was the unexpected kindness he had extended when he mentioned her sister. Whatever it was, Emma couldn't deny that it made her feel something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of belonging, of being seen. She hadn't realized how much she longed for that until it was almost too late. Dante's table was always surrounded by his men, and Emma could feel the tension in the air as soon as she stepped into the room. But when their eyes met, everything else seemed to fade away. For a brief moment, it was just the two of them, locked in a silent understanding. It made her breath catch in her throat every time. She had no idea why he was looking at her like that, why he had said those things to her. Maybe it was just a fleeting moment of kindness, a show of empathy from someone who had been through their own fair share of pain. Or maybe he saw something in her that she didn't want to acknowledge. Either way, she couldn't stop herself from wondering what it would be like to be with him, to understand the man behind the cold exterior. One evening, Dante waved her over to his table, his usual entourage of bodyguards standing close by. Emma's heart raced as she walked toward him, her hands trembling slightly as she set the wine down. His gaze softened as she approached, and for a moment, she felt like the rest of the world had disappeared. Emma, he said, his voice calm and steady. How have you been? She blinked, surprised by the question. It wasn't like him to ask about her. I've been managing, she replied, offering a small smile. And you? How's everything going? She regretted the words the moment they left her mouth. She didn't need to know about his life. She didn't want to. But something about him made her want to ask. Dante took a slow sip of his wine, his eyes never leaving hers. Everything is, as it is, he said cryptically. But I want to talk to you about something. Emma's breath caught in her throat. What is it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been thinking about our last conversation, Dante said, his tone softer now. And I want to help you, Emma. I know you're not here for the luxury or the fame. You're here because you need something more. I can give you that. Emma felt her heart skip a beat. She had heard those words before. People promising things they couldn't deliver. But there was something in Dante's eyes that made her hesitate. It wasn't just a business deal. It was something deeper. Something real. What do you mean? She asked, unable to hide the curiosity in her voice. I'm offering you a chance to change your life, he said, his voice low and steady. No more cleaning floors. No more struggling to get by. You have potential, Emma, and I can help you tap into it. But you need to trust me. Emma's mind raced. This wasn't what she expected when she first came to work here. She never thought someone like Dante would offer her a way out. But here he was, offering her everything she had ever dreamed of, and more. But there was a catch. There always was. What do you want in return? She asked, already knowing the answer. Nothing, yet, Dante said, his smile faint but genuine. But when the time comes, I'll ask for something in return. And I promise you, it will be worth it. Emma stared at him, uncertain of how to respond. She had spent her entire life being invisible, staying out of trouble, keeping to the shadows. But now, for the first time, she was being offered a way out. Out of the restaurant, out of her struggles, out of the life she had known. It was everything she had ever wanted, yet everything she had been taught to avoid. Was this a trap? Was it a deal with the devil? Dante saw the hesitation in her eyes, and his expression softened. I know it's a lot to ask, but think about it, he said quietly. You don't have to decide right now, but I'm giving you the opportunity to change your life. Don't let it slip away. Emma stood there, her mind racing as she processed everything he had said. She had always prided herself on being independent, on doing things on her own terms. But now, she wasn't so sure anymore. What if this was the chance she had been waiting for? What if this was her one shot at a better life? The more she thought about it, the more she realized that this might be the only opportunity she would ever get. And maybe, just maybe, it was worth taking a risk. She nodded slowly. I'll think about it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Dante smiled, the faintest hint of approval in his gaze. Take your time, he said. But know this. When you're ready, I'll be here, waiting. Emma left the table that night with her mind swirling in a whirlwind of possibilities. She had no idea where this would lead, but one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. My sister had a ring like that, said the waitress to the Mafia boss. What how this ring is. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Emma didn't know what to do with the offer Dante had made her. The words, I'll be here, waiting, kept echoing in her mind as she walked out of the restaurant that night. The city lights of Manhattan seemed brighter than usual, but her head was clouded with thoughts of what was to come. She was always the one who kept her head down, stuck to the background, and kept to herself. But now, for the first time in her life, someone was offering her a chance at something different. A chance at a future. She hadn't planned on getting involved with Dante Romano or anyone from his world. It was too dangerous. Too much power, too many enemies, and far too many things she didn't understand. But the more she thought about it, the more the idea started to make sense. She had always been invisible, a shadow, a person who just did her job and went home. But now, Dante was offering her the chance to step into the light, to take control of her own destiny. She had worked at the restaurant for so long, never once thinking she could escape the life she had built for herself. It was a life of struggle, hard work, and endless sacrifices. She had watched others move up, get better opportunities, but she had always believed it wasn't for people like her. But now, Dante's offer lingered in the air, pulling at her. The possibilities were too tempting to ignore. The next few days passed in a blur. Emma couldn't stop thinking about Dante, about the offer he had made, and about what her life could be like if she took the risk. She knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be consequences. But what if it was the only chance she had? What if she could finally stop struggling? She had never been someone who took risks. But Dante had a way of making her question everything she had ever known. Every time she saw him, his eyes seemed to speak volumes. He was powerful, yes, but there was something else about him, something deeper. It wasn't just his status that attracted her. It was the vulnerability that she saw hidden beneath his cold exterior. That night, Emma couldn't take it anymore. She needed to know what Dante wanted from her. What was behind the offer? She had spent too many sleepless nights thinking about it, and she needed answers. So, when she walked into the restaurant that evening and saw him sitting at his usual table, surrounded by his bodyguards, she took a deep breath and walked straight toward him. Mr. Romano, she said, her voice steady but her heart racing. He looked up at her, his eyes cold but curious. Emma, he replied, his voice smooth, as if nothing had changed. I was hoping we could talk. He gestured for her to sit down. She hesitated for a moment before sliding into the chair across from him. What is it you want from me? She asked, her voice firm. Dante studied her for a moment, as if considering how much to say. Finally, he leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving hers. I told you I wanted to help you, he said, his tone low but sincere. But I need to know that you're ready to take this step. This isn't just a favor. It's a commitment. Emma's mind raced. What kind of commitment was he talking about? What do you mean by commitment? she asked, her curiosity getting the best of her. Dante paused, his expression softening for the briefest moment. I'm offering you a way out. A chance to live a life that's yours. But in return, you have to trust me. You have to let me guide you. And you have to understand that once you step into my world, there's no turning back. The weight of his words settled heavily on her chest. She had always been independent, had always done everything on her own. But now, she was being asked to trust someone else. Trust him. Why me? She asked, unable to hide the confusion in her voice. Dante leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense. Because you're different, he said simply. You're not like the others. You're not after fame, money, or power. You want something real, and I can give that to you. Emma swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. Was this really happening? Was she really sitting here with a mafia boss, being offered a life she never imagined? She had spent so many years thinking she wasn't worthy of something more. But now, here she was, questioning everything she had ever known. What do you want me to do? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dante smiled, the corners of his lips curling just slightly. For now, all I need you to do is decide. Decide if you're ready to leave your old life behind and start a new one. Emma didn't know what to say. The decision seemed too big, too overwhelming. But at the same time, she couldn't deny that the thought of a new life was something she had longed for. She had always wanted more, but she never thought she could have it. I don't know if I'm ready, she admitted, her voice shaky. Dante reached across the table, his fingers brushing lightly against hers. Take your time, he said softly. I'm not going anywhere. As she left the restaurant that night, Emma's mind was filled with a storm of emotions. She had always believed that dreams were for other people, not for someone like her. But now, with Dante's offer hanging in the air, she realized that maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to finally have what she had always wanted. A chance at something real. My sister had a ring like that, said the waitress to the mafia boss. What how this ring is? Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Emma's heart raced as she walked away from Dante's table that night. Her mind was still reeling from the conversation they had just had. The offer he had made her, an opportunity to leave behind everything she knew and start a new life, was more than she had ever dreamed possible. But as much as she wanted to take that step, doubt continued to cloud her thoughts. Could she really trust him? Could she trust herself? The life Dante promised her was nothing like the quiet existence she had carved out for herself. It was fast-paced, filled with power, danger, and unpredictability. She had spent her entire life avoiding that kind of world, keeping her head down, and staying invisible. But now, it seemed that world was staring her in the face, and the choice was hers to make. Emma spent the next few days in a daze. She tried to go about her usual routine at the restaurant, but her mind was constantly drawn back to Dante and his offer. She had never been the type of person to take risks, to step outside of her comfort zone. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that this could be her chance to escape the life she had grown tired of. She could have more than just the constant struggle, the endless hours of work, and the feeling that she was always on the outside looking in. But it wasn't just about the money or the power. What Dante had promised her was something she had always longed for, a chance to be seen, to be valued, and to have a future where she could make her own choices. That evening, as she was getting ready for her shift at the restaurant, Emma found herself staring at the small silver ring on her finger. It was simple, nothing like the extravagant rings she had seen on the wealthy patrons who dined at the restaurant. But it was hers, a reminder of everything she had worked for, everything she had sacrificed. It was a symbol of her independence, of the life she had built for herself. But as she looked at it, she couldn't help but feel that it wasn't enough anymore. She had always thought that this life was all she could have, but now, Dante's offer made her question everything. Could she really walk away from everything she knew? Could she leave behind the only world she had ever known for something unknown, something dangerous, yet exciting? Emma arrived at the restaurant, and as expected, Dante was already there, sitting at his usual table, surrounded by his men. She felt a lump form in her throat as she walked toward him. She wasn't sure if she was ready to make a decision, but she couldn't ignore the pull she felt toward him. As she approached the table, Dante looked up at her with those dark eyes of his, and for a moment, everything else in the room seemed to fade away. "Emma," he said, his voice low, yet warm. "You look different tonight." She hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And?" he prompted, leaning forward slightly. Emma took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I want to take the risk," she said, her voice steadier now. "I'm ready." Dante's lips curled into a smile, and for the first time, Emma saw a glimpse of something genuine behind his usual cold demeanor. "I knew you would be," he said, his voice soft. "You won't regret this." As she stood there, facing him, Emma realized that this was the moment that would change her life. She had made the choice. She was stepping into a world she didn't fully understand, a world that was both thrilling and terrifying. But in that moment, she felt a sense of excitement building inside her. She didn't know what the future held, but she was ready to face it. "What now?" she asked, her voice filled with anticipation. Dante leaned back in his chair, studying her for a moment. "Now, we move forward," he said. "You're part of my world now, Emma. And I'll protect you, but you have to trust me. This is just the beginning." As Emma walked away from his table that night, she couldn't help but feel a sense of purpose she had never known before. She had made her choice, and she was ready to embrace whatever came next. Little did she know, her decision would set off a chain of events that would not only change her life, but would also pull her deeper into a world of danger, betrayal, and unexpected love. "My sister had a ring like that," said the waitress to the Mafia boss. "What how this ring is?" "Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The following weeks felt like a whirlwind for Emma. After the decision she had made with Dante, everything began to move faster than she had anticipated. Her once quiet life at the restaurant had been replaced with meetings and phone calls that pulled her deeper into his world. It was a world of luxury, power, and danger, all wrapped up in a polished exterior. Dante had kept his word, offering her protection and a place in his world, but with that came the constant pressure to fit in and adapt. Emma felt the weight of it every day. As she sat in a sleek black car, being driven to one of Dante's many properties, she couldn't help but wonder if she had made the right choice. She had always told herself that she was strong, independent, and that she could handle anything. But now, as she navigated this new life, she realized just how much she was still learning. The mansion in which Dante had placed her felt like a dream, spacious, elegant, with high ceilings and a view of the city that seemed to stretch on forever. It was a far cry from the small apartment she had shared with her sister before her passing. Emma often found herself standing by the windows, looking out at the skyline, wondering if this was the life she had always wanted. Dante had insisted that she take time to settle in, but it was hard to relax when she didn't know what was expected of her. The first few days were a blur of introductions to Dante's team, briefings about the various businesses he controlled, and subtle reminders of the rules she was to follow. She was to remain a part of his world, but never fully immerse herself in it. She was a bystander, someone to be protected, someone who would remain on the outskirts of the empire. She had agreed to this, but it felt more isolating than she had imagined. Dante visited her often, always with that cool and collected demeanor he had mastered. He never pressured her, but his presence was a constant reminder that she was now part of something much bigger than herself. One evening, as Emma sat on the balcony overlooking the city, Dante approached her. He was dressed in his usual tailored suit, his dark eyes scanning the skyline. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was comfortable, but Emma could feel the tension building between them. "How are you adjusting?" Dante asked, breaking the silence. Emma sighed and leaned back in her chair. "I'm getting used to it," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't help but feel out of place sometimes." Dante chuckled softly, the sound rich with amusement. "You're not out of place, Emma. You just need to realize that this life is yours now. You don't have to fit in. You just have to be yourself." Emma looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. It was a rare moment when he let down his guard, and she could see the weight of responsibility that he carried. "I didn't expect this," she admitted, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "This isn't the life I thought I'd be living." Dante's expression softened, and he took a step closer to her. "I didn't either," he said quietly. "But sometimes, life pushes us in a direction we never thought we'd go. You can't fight it. You just have to make the best of it." Emma nodded, unsure of how to respond. She had never been one to follow anyone else's path, but Dante's words made her question whether she was right to try to fight the tide. Over the next few days, Emma found herself slowly adjusting to the rhythm of the life Dante had offered her. There were moments of tension, of course, those times when she felt like a stranger in his world, when she wasn't sure what role she was supposed to play. But there were also moments of connection, small gestures that made her feel like she belonged. Dante was always there when she needed him, and although he remained a man of few words, she could see the care in his actions. As she sat across from him one evening at a private dinner, she found herself thinking more and more about the man she was slowly getting to know. He wasn't just the ruthless mafia boss everyone feared. He was a man with a past, someone who had been shaped by loss and hardship. "You've been quiet tonight," Dante remarked, his eyes studying her carefully. "Something on your mind?" Emma hesitated, unsure of how to put her thoughts into words. "I'm just trying to figure out what this all means," she said slowly. "You've offered me so much, Dante. I don't know how to repay you." Dante leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "You don't have to repay me," he said, his voice soft. "But you do need to trust me. Trust that I'm doing this because I believe in you." Emma's heart skipped a beat at his words. She had always been skeptical of people's motives, especially when they seemed too good to be true. But with Dante, there was something different. He wasn't just offering her a life of luxury. He was offering her a chance to rebuild herself, to live without the constant fear that had defined her life for so long. "I trust you," she said quietly, her voice steady. Dante smiled, a rare and genuine smile that made her heart flutter. "Good. That's all I need from you." As the days turned into weeks, Emma found herself more and more comfortable in the life Dante had given her. But deep down, she knew that the path she was on would eventually lead to a decision she wasn't sure she was ready to make. Dante's world was dangerous, unpredictable, and filled with threats she couldn't even begin to understand. But as much as she feared it, she also knew that this was the world she had chosen to be part of. And with that realization came a sense of freedom she had never known before. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was someone who had the power to change her own destiny. "My sister had a ring like that," said the waitress to the mafia boss. "What how this ring is." "Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Emma's life had changed in ways she had never imagined since she stepped into Dante's world. At first, it felt like a dream, luxurious homes, access to power, and a future that seemed boundless. But as the days turned into weeks, Emma began to realize just how deep she had waded into a world of danger. The gleaming surface of her new life had a dark underbelly, one that Dante's empire was built on. Her days were filled with high-end shopping, exclusive events, and business meetings, but at night, she lay awake, wondering what exactly she had gotten herself into. Dante had made it clear from the beginning that there would be no turning back once she accepted his offer. And now, she was beginning to understand what he meant. The nights were the worst. There were times when she felt his eyes on her, watching her every move, scrutinizing her. It was as though he was trying to figure her out, to see if she was truly fit for the life he had promised her. At first, she had believed that everything was moving smoothly. She was following the rules, staying in the background, and doing her part in this world of wealth and privilege. But with each passing day, the pressure was building. One evening, as she sat alone in the lavish apartment Dante had given her, she received a call that sent a chill down her spine. It was one of Dante's men, a voice she recognized from their earlier meetings. "Miss Emma," he said, his tone urgent. "There's been a situation. We need you to come to the office immediately." Emma's heart raced. She had learned not to ask questions about the things Dante was involved in, but she could sense that something was wrong. Without hesitation, she grabbed her jacket and headed out. The drive to Dante's office felt like it took an eternity. The city lights blurred past her, the familiar streets now seeming foreign, as if they were part of a world she no longer fully understood. When she arrived, she was escorted into a darkened room where Dante was waiting. He was seated at the head of a long table, his face expressionless. The air was thick with tension, and Emma could feel it in her bones. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Dante's gaze met hers, his eyes colder than usual. "There's been a breach," he said, his voice low and controlled. "Someone has been talking, and I need to know who it is." Emma didn't fully understand, but she could feel the weight of the situation. Dante's empire was built on secrecy, on silence. Anyone who betrayed that trust could be a threat. And now, it seemed that threat was closer than they had realized. As Dante spoke, explaining the situation in hushed tones, Emma began to feel the walls closing in around her. She had made the choice to join this world, but the stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. There were no safe places here, no corners to hide in. This was the reality of the life Dante lived. The luxury, the power, all came at a price. As the night wore on, Dante's mood shifted. He was no longer the calm, calculated man Emma had come to know. His focus was razor-sharp, his every move deliberate. It was a side of him she hadn't seen before, and it terrified her. She realized, in that moment, that she was no longer just an observer in this world. She was part of it. And there was no turning back. Hours passed, and the tension in the room only grew. Emma watched as Dante made phone calls, issued orders, and met with his closest associates. She had no idea what was happening, but she knew one thing. This was bigger than anything she had ever known. Eventually, Dante turned to her, his face hard, but his eyes betraying a flicker of emotion. "I've protected you so far, Emma," he said, his voice almost gentle. "But there's only so much I can do. From here on out, you need to be careful. There are people who will do anything to get what they want." Emma swallowed, trying to process everything. She had trusted him, trusted that this world would offer her a better life. But now, she wasn't so sure. She could feel the danger closing in around her. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was real, and the consequences were real too. "I don't know if I'm cut out for this," she admitted, her voice trembling. Dante stood, walking toward her slowly. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm. "You are," he said quietly. "You've made it this far. Now, you just need to trust yourself." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Emma wasn't sure if she could trust herself in this world, but Dante had given her no choice. She had already made her decision, and now, she had to live with it. As she left the office that night, her mind was in turmoil. She had always believed that she could navigate her life on her own, but now, she understood the true cost of the choices she had made. Dante had pulled her into his world, and there was no escaping it. The darkness was all around her, and she was now a part of it. "My sister had a ring like that," said the waitress to the Mafia boss. "What how this ring is." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. After the events of the previous night, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that everything was changing faster than she could keep up with. Dante had told her there was no turning back, and she had accepted that fact, but now it felt more real than ever. The choices she made now were not only hers, but would affect her future in ways she couldn't predict. Dante had promised her protection, a life beyond the confines of the restaurant, but she hadn't anticipated the weight of that promise. His world was consuming her, and she didn't know if she was ready for it. Over the next few days, Emma tried to adjust. She spent her time in the mansion, away from the chaos of the city, yet somehow still surrounded by it. The rooms were vast and filled with priceless artifacts, everything in pristine condition. She felt like she was living in a different reality, one that didn't belong to her. She spent hours alone, reading, walking through the manicured gardens, and listening to the distant sounds of Dante's meetings. She was becoming accustomed to the luxury, but the unease never left her. One evening, Dante invited her to accompany him to a business meeting, a gathering that involved some of the most influential people in his circle. The thought of attending sent a wave of anxiety through Emma, but she knew it was part of the life she had agreed to. When the night of the meeting arrived, she was dressed in a sleek black dress, her hair styled simply but elegantly. She looked at herself in the mirror, trying to steady her nerves. The woman staring back at her seemed like a stranger. This wasn't the life she had planned, but she had chosen it. As she made her way to the car that would take her to the venue, her mind was racing. She hadn't been to an event like this before. Everything about it was foreign, luxury, power, people who played the game of business in ways she couldn't begin to understand. Dante's voice interrupted her thoughts as he entered the car beside her. "You look beautiful, Emma," he said with a rare smile. For a moment, she forgot to breathe. His compliment was unexpected, and it left her feeling more exposed than she cared to admit. "Thank you," she replied, her voice betraying the nervousness she was trying so hard to mask. The drive to the event was quiet, filled with the hum of the city and the occasional rustle of Dante's notes as he prepared for the meeting. When they arrived, the atmosphere was nothing short of intimidating. The venue was an exclusive, private club on the upper floors of a towering skyscraper. The lights were dim, and the air was thick with the hum of quiet conversations and the clink of glasses. Emma felt out of place, the sharp contrast between the rich, polished world around her and her humble beginnings never more evident. As they entered the room, heads turned. People nodded in Dante's direction, acknowledging his presence with a mixture of respect and fear. Emma felt a chill run through her as Dante led her to a table near the center of the room. She was acutely aware of the eyes on her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong here. As the night wore on, Dante was engaged in conversations with various influential figures. Emma sat beside him, trying to remain invisible, just as she had always done. But it was impossible to ignore the power dynamics at play. She was surrounded by people who exuded confidence and wealth. People who, by all rights, should have been far above her station. Yet, here she was, sitting next to Dante Romano, as if she were one of them. The evening dragged on, with discussions of business deals and alliances that Emma barely understood. She sipped her wine slowly, trying to keep herself occupied, but her mind kept returning to Dante. The way he interacted with people, the way they deferred to him, it was all so natural for him, and yet so foreign to her. During a brief lull in the conversation, Dante turned to her. "Emma," he said, his voice quiet. "How are you holding up?" She looked at him, unsure of how to answer. "I'm fine," she replied, giving him a small smile. "It's just all a bit overwhelming." Dante studied her for a moment, his expression softening. "I know it's a lot to take in," he said, "but you're doing well. You've adapted faster than most would." Emma felt a surge of gratitude, but it was quickly replaced by doubt. "I don't know if I'm ready for this, Dante," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Dante's gaze softened, and for the first time that evening, he reached out, gently touching her hand. "You don't have to be ready. You just have to trust that I'll be here to guide you." His words were simple, but they carried an unexpected weight. Emma had never been someone who relied on others, but in that moment, she felt the full force of Dante's offer. He wasn't just offering her a life of luxury. He was offering her something deeper, his trust, his protection, and perhaps, for the first time in her life, a chance to truly belong. The night ended too quickly, and Emma found herself back in the car, this time in silence. She was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. But as the city lights passed by, she couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, Dante's world was the one she was meant to be in. There was still so much to understand, so much to learn, but for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel completely lost. She had chosen this path, and now, she would see where it would take her. "My sister had a ring like that," said the waitress to the Mafia boss. "What how this ring is?" Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Days turned into weeks, and Emma found herself adapting to the strange new life that Dante had promised her. It wasn't easy. At first, Everything had felt like a dream. Luxury, security, and freedom from the struggles she had endured for so long. But as time passed, the reality of what she had stepped into began to sink in. There were no easy answers, no simple rules, just the constant pressure to keep up, to fit into a world that seemed so much bigger and darker than anything she had ever known. Dante was always there, hovering in the background, watching her with a quiet intensity. He was everything she had come to expect, powerful, calculated, and distant. Yet, there were moments when she saw another side to him. A gentleness, a softness, that caught her off guard. It was as if, behind the cold exterior, there was a man who cared. A man who, in his own way, was trying to protect her from a world she wasn't fully prepared for. But the more Emma got to know him, the more she realized that protection came with a price. Dante's world was one of secrecy and danger, filled with people whose loyalty could not be trusted and alliances that could change at a moment's notice. Emma had no illusions about this life. She was a part of it now, and she knew that her every move would be watched, scrutinized, and judged. But despite the tension, despite the fear, there was something about Dante's presence that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, this could be her chance at a life worth living. One evening, Dante invited Emma to a private gathering at one of his other properties, a mansion nestled on a hilltop with a sweeping view of the city. The invitation was casual, but Emma knew better than to ignore it. She had learned by now that every invitation, every word spoken by Dante, carried weight. She wasn't sure what the night would bring, but she knew it was another test. Another moment where she would be asked to prove herself worthy of the life he had offered her. As she arrived at the mansion, she was greeted by Dante's men. The house was grand, but not in the ostentatious way she had expected. It was elegant, refined, with a quiet, understated beauty that contrasted sharply with the sharp, dangerous world Dante inhabited. She followed one of the men through the halls to a large, dimly lit room where the gathering was taking place. Dante was already there, standing by the window, surveying the city. There was something about the way he stood, so calm, so in control, that made him seem untouchable. As Emma entered the room, he turned and nodded at her, a small but meaningful gesture that made her feel oddly reassured. "You made it," Dante said, his voice calm and composed, but there was something in his eyes that made Emma pause, something she couldn't quite place. "I didn't want to miss the fun," she replied, trying to keep her tone light, though she could feel her heart pounding in her chest. Dante smiled, but it was a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He gestured to the others in the room, some of his most trusted associates, who were engaged in quiet conversations. "Come," he said, "I want you to meet some people." Emma nodded, trying to steady her nerves. As she walked further into the room, she couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was watching her, judging her. She had never been one to shy away from attention, but this was different. This was Dante's world, and every move she made would be scrutinized. As Dante introduced her to several of his associates, Emma could feel the weight of their gazes. They weren't just looking at her as a new face in the crowd. They were measuring her, sizing her up, trying to figure out where she fit into this world. For a moment, she felt completely out of place. But then, Dante's voice cut through her thoughts. "Emma here is more than just an outsider," he said, his tone cool and steady. "She's a part of this now, and she deserves to be treated with respect." There was an edge to his words, a warning. Emma didn't know if it was meant for her or for the others in the room, but it didn't matter. She could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The tension in the room tightened, and suddenly, she wasn't just the waitress anymore. She wasn't just an outsider. She was someone to be reckoned with. As the night went on, Emma felt herself growing more and more comfortable in the room. Dante's presence, though imposing, gave her a sense of security. She realized that, for the first time, she wasn't just existing in the background. She was an active participant in this world. But as the evening wore on, Emma began to feel the weight of the decisions she had made. She had agreed to this life, but now, standing in that room, surrounded by people who had power and influence, she couldn't help but wonder, was she ready for what was to come? The stakes were high, and the consequences of failure were severe. But there was no turning back now. She had made her choice, and now, it was up to her to prove that she belonged here. As the night came to a close, Dante approached her once more. His eyes were soft, but there was something in his gaze that made her heart race. "You did well tonight," he said quietly. "You're proving yourself, Emma." Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Thank you," she whispered, unsure of what else to say. Dante's lips curved into a small smile. "Just remember," he said, "this is only the beginning. There's more to come, and you have to be ready for it." Emma nodded, her thoughts racing. She had taken the first step into Dante's world, and now she had to be ready for whatever came next. "My sister had a ring like that," said the waitress to the Mafia boss. "What how this ring is?" "Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much." The following days after the event at Dante's mansion were a blur for Emma. She had spent so much time trying to adapt to the life he had offered her, but now, it felt like everything was happening too quickly. The world she had entered was moving at a pace she couldn't control, and she was caught in its current, unsure if she was swimming or drowning. Dante had been more distant since the gathering. He still checked in on her, still offered her protection, but there was a coldness in his demeanor that made her second-guess everything. Was he regretting his decision to bring her into this world? Or was there something more, something darker that she wasn't seeing? Emma spent her days alone in the mansion, trying to occupy herself with books and the quiet hum of the city in the distance. It was beautiful, but it was also suffocating. She hadn't been used to the silence, to the loneliness that crept up on her when the world outside was so busy. Every time she thought about leaving, she remembered Dante's words. There's no turning back. She had committed to this life, but did she really understand what she had gotten herself into? One night, as she stood by the window looking out at the city lights, she saw Dante pull up in his black SUV. The moment his car stopped in front of the mansion, Emma felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. She knew something was coming. He had been silent for days, but now he was back. She took a deep breath and walked downstairs, her heart beating faster with each step. As she reached the front door, it opened before she could touch the handle. Dante stood there, his usual stoic expression masking whatever emotions lay beneath. "Emma," he said simply, his voice calm, but with an edge she couldn't place. "Come with me." Without a word, she followed him outside, the cool night air hitting her face as they walked toward the car. It was clear he wasn't going to explain where they were going or why. Emma didn't ask. She had learned to trust him in his silence. The drive was quiet, the only sound the low hum of the engine and the occasional click of the indicator. As they drove further into the city, Emma tried to piece together what was happening. It wasn't long before they reached a small, secluded building on the outskirts of town. The area was dark, almost deserted. Dante parked the car and turned to her. "Stay close," he said, his voice low. Emma nodded, following him out of the car and toward the entrance. They were met by a few of Dante's men, who gave her a quick glance before escorting them inside. The building was stark, its walls bare except for a few pieces of furniture that looked like they had been thrown together hastily. It was not the luxury she had become accustomed to, and the change in atmosphere made Emma feel uneasy. Dante led her into a small room where a table was set up, papers scattered across it. Several other men were already seated, their faces hard, their eyes wary as they looked up at Dante. There was no warm greeting, no pleasantries, just business. Emma felt out of place, but she stayed silent, watching as Dante moved with his usual calm confidence. He was in control here, and she was just a spectator to something far beyond her understanding. "This is the situation," Dante began, his voice steady, as he addressed the men. "We have a leak. Someone in the organization has been talking." The room fell into a heavy silence as everyone absorbed his words. Emma's heart raced. She knew this was no ordinary situation. If Dante was involved, if he was this serious, the consequences would be severe. One of the men at the table, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a scar running down his cheek, stood up. "Do you have any idea who it is?" he asked, his voice rough. Dante nodded, his gaze fixed on the man. "Yes," he replied coldly. "It's someone who thought they could get away with betraying me." He turned his gaze to Emma for the briefest moment before looking back at the men. "You all know what happens next." The air in the room grew thicker, Emma could feel the tension radiating from every corner. She had seen Dante's power from a distance, but now, in the midst of this, she saw the full extent of it. He wasn't just a man in a suit. He was a force to be reckoned with. The room erupted into murmurs, voices low and urgent as the men began discussing their next steps. Emma didn't say a word. She wasn't part of this world. She had made her choice to be with Dante, but moments like this made her wonder if she truly understood what she had gotten herself into. Dante moved to the table, his presence commanding everyone's attention. "We deal with this quickly," he said, his voice firm. "No mistakes." The men nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. Dante turned to Emma then, his eyes softening for just a second. "You don't need to worry," he said quietly. "Stay here. I'll handle it." Emma wasn't sure if he was trying to reassure her or if he was simply stating the facts. Either way, she felt a surge of unease. This was Dante's world. This was what he did, and she had stepped into it, unknowingly becoming a part of it. As the men continued to discuss their plans, Dante led her out of the room, his hand lightly brushing hers as they walked back to the car. The night air felt colder now, the weight of what had just happened hanging over them. Emma didn't know what to say. She didn't know what to do. But one thing was clear, there was no turning back from this. She had chosen this life, and now she had to live with it. As they drove back to the mansion, Dante remained silent, his face set in its usual mask of calm. Emma glanced at him, unsure of what the future held. But one thing she knew for sure, she was now fully immersed in the world Dante ruled, and there was no going back. "My sister had a ring like that," said the waitress to the Mafia boss. "What how this ring is." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The days following the tension-filled meeting were a blur for Emma. She had found herself grappling with the reality of Dante's world, a world she was now a part of, though it still felt like an unfamiliar suit she wasn't sure she could wear. She had never been one for danger or uncertainty, but now, there was no going back. As much as she wanted to believe that she was still in control of her own fate, the truth was undeniable. She was now tangled in Dante's web. The mansion, once a symbol of luxury and escape from her previous life, now felt more like a gilded cage. Despite the elegance of the surroundings, there was a heaviness in the air that made it hard for Emma to breathe. She was constantly aware of the silent presence of Dante's men, the whisper of danger always lingering in the background. She knew that she had entered a world where power and control ruled everything and everyone. But even with the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her, Dante remained a constant presence, like an anchor in the storm. He was everything she had expected, and yet so much more than she had imagined. He wasn't just cold and calculating. He had a way of drawing her in, making her feel seen, even in a world that was constantly moving around her. One evening, as she sat alone in the mansion, Emma felt the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. The silence in the house was deafening, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. She had been spending more time with Dante lately, but despite their conversations, she still didn't feel like she truly understood him. There were glimpses of vulnerability, moments when she could see that there was more to him than just the ruthless mafia boss. But those moments were fleeting, and she couldn't help but wonder if she was fooling herself. Was Dante just playing a game with her? Or was there something real between them? She couldn't deny the chemistry, the pull between them that seemed to grow stronger with every passing day. But she also couldn't ignore the fact that this was the same man who had built an empire on fear and power. She had seen his ruthlessness firsthand, witnessed how he dealt with betrayal and disloyalty. She had learned quickly that in his world, weakness was not tolerated. As the days turned into weeks, Emma found herself slipping further into the role Dante had created for her. She wasn't just the waitress anymore. She wasn't just a bystander in his world. She was someone he had chosen to protect, someone he trusted, and that trust carried a heavy responsibility. One night, as they sat together at dinner, Dante looked at her with an intensity that made her heart race. "You've been quiet," he said, his voice low. Emma smiled faintly, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm just thinking," she said, About what? Dante pressed, his gaze unwavering. Emma hesitated. She had always been a thinker, a person who tried to analyze every situation, every word, before reacting. But with Dante, it was different. His presence made her feel exposed, as if he could see through her carefully constructed walls. About what I'm doing here, she finally admitted. Dante raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by her admission. You're here because you belong here, Emma. I wouldn't have brought you into my world if I didn't think you were capable of handling it. His words were simple, but they struck a chord within her. She wanted to believe him, to trust in the future he had promised her. But deep down, she knew that the world she had stepped into was not as clear-cut as he made it seem. I don't know if I'm ready for this, she said quietly, almost to herself. Dante's expression softened for a brief moment, but the hardness soon returned. You don't need to be ready. You just need to trust me, he said, his voice steady. That's the only thing that matters. His words hung in the air, and for a moment, Emma thought about what it meant to trust him. She had trusted him enough to follow him into his world, but now, she was questioning whether that trust was enough to navigate the dangerous waters ahead. I trust you, she said finally, her voice firm. Dante's eyes softened, and for the briefest moment, Emma saw something in him that she hadn't seen before, a glimpse of the man behind the Mafia boss. Good, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Because trust is all we have in this world. Emma sat back in her chair, her mind swirling with thoughts of the future. Dante was offering her everything: protection, power, a life beyond the one she had known. But at what cost? As the night wore on, Emma couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her chest. She had made her choice, but now, she was starting to realize the gravity of it. There was no turning back, no way to undo the decision she had made. Dante's world was now her world, and the dangers that came with it were hers to face. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: she was no longer just an observer. She was a part of this world, and she would have to fight to survive in it. The question was, would she be able to navigate the darkness, or would it consume her? My sister had a ring like that, said the waitress to the Mafia boss. What how this ring is? Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The days following the tension-filled night at Dante's meeting had left Emma feeling unsettled. She knew she had made the choice to be part of this world, but now, more than ever, she was feeling the weight of it all. The quiet had returned to the mansion, and so had the cold reality. The allure of Dante's world, the luxury, the power, the promise of protection, had started to lose its shine. What she had once thought was a dream now felt more like a trap. She had been drawn into something bigger than herself, and now she was struggling to find her place. Dante's presence was ever constant. He was always around, watching, waiting, as if he could see right through her. Yet, despite his constant proximity, there was a distance between them. Emma couldn't quite figure out what it was, but the air around them felt thick with unspoken words. She had trusted him. She had to, because he had promised to protect her. But trust was a fragile thing, and Emma wasn't sure if it was enough to hold everything together. As the days dragged on, the mansion's lavish halls seemed to close in on her. The rooms, once full of grandeur, now felt empty. The life she had left behind seemed like a distant memory, and the life she was now living seemed so uncertain. One afternoon, as she walked through the garden, trying to clear her mind, she was interrupted by a voice behind her. "You've been quiet," Dante said, his voice low, but sharp enough to cut through the silence. She turned to face him, surprised to find him standing so close. "I've been thinking," Emma replied, her voice steady, though she could feel the anxiety bubbling inside her. Dante studied her for a moment before stepping closer. "Thinking about what?" he asked, his tone unreadable. Emma hesitated, her thoughts racing. She couldn't ignore the doubt creeping into her mind. "I'm not sure this is the life I expected," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Dante's expression remained impassive, but she could see the flicker of something behind his eyes, something that made her heart race. "What did you expect?" he asked, his voice tinged with something Emma couldn't quite place. She took a deep breath. I thought I could be part of this world. That it would give me something more, something better. But I feel like I'm just waiting for something to happen. And I don't know what to do next. Dante didn't say anything for a long moment. He simply watched her, his dark eyes calculating, as if deciding whether or not to reveal something. You're here because I want you here, he said finally. But you're right. You can't be a passive participant in this world. You have to make your own decisions. And that includes deciding whether or not you truly want to be here. Emma felt the weight of his words press down on her. She had been waiting for him to make the decisions, to tell her what to do next. But now, he was telling her to take control. I've never been good at making decisions, she said quietly. I've always let others decide for me. Dante stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. That's the first mistake, he said, his voice firm. In this world, no one else makes the decisions for you. You either take control, or you get swept away. Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something in his voice that made her realize just how much she had underestimated the gravity of the situation. I can't just walk away, she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Dante's eyes softened for a brief moment, but his expression remained guarded. You can, but there are consequences. His words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. I'm not asking you to walk away, he continued. I'm asking you to decide what kind of life you want. Do you want to be part of this world, or do you want to let it swallow you whole? Emma stood in silence, feeling the weight of his words settle into her chest. She had known that the stakes were high, but hearing it from him, hearing the truth about what it meant to be a part of his world, made everything feel more real. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted, the vulnerability in her voice catching her off guard. Dante reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch surprisingly gentle. I'm not asking you to do it alone, he said softly. You don't have to figure it all out right now. Just trust me. And trust yourself. Emma looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she saw something different, a sincerity that had been missing before. Maybe this was the trust she had been searching for, the trust that would allow her to find her place in this world. She didn't have all the answers, but she had made it this far. And maybe that was enough for now. I'll try, she said quietly, feeling the weight of her words. Dante's lips curved into a faint smile. That's all I ask. As Emma walked away, her mind was still spinning with the realization of what Dante had said. She couldn't escape this life. But maybe, just maybe, she could learn to live in it on her own terms. My sister had a ring like that, said the waitress to the Mafia boss. What how this ring is? Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The days after their conversation were a blur of mixed emotions for Emma. She had given herself to Dante's world, fully embracing everything he had offered. Yet now the weight of the decision was sinking in deeper with each passing day. She had become a part of something far bigger, more dangerous than anything she had ever imagined. Dante had given her power, protection, and a place in his world, but she was beginning to realize that with all of that came responsibility, an unspoken promise she had to keep, and the pressure to never show weakness. He had told her to trust herself, to make her own decisions, but what did that really mean in a world like his? She spent her days in the mansion, still trying to adjust to the lifestyle that had once seemed like a dream. The luxury, the constant surveillance, and the guarded atmosphere all felt so distant from her former life. Every move she made seemed to be watched, and every word spoken was weighed with meaning. She was no longer just Emma the waitress. She was someone who had to walk the fine line between being trusted and being scrutinized. One evening, as she stood by the window looking at the city below, she felt a familiar presence behind her. Dante was there, standing quietly, watching her. There was no need for words, yet his presence alone made her heart race. It was moments like this that made her question everything. You've been quiet, Dante said after a long pause, his voice calm and even. Emma turned to face him, unable to hide the doubt in her eyes. I've been thinking, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. About everything. About what I'm doing here. Dante studied her for a moment, his eyes never leaving hers. "This is your life now, Emma. The life you chose," he replied, his tone surprisingly soft, almost reassuring. "You're not here because I made you be here. You're here because you made the decision to be." Emma nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She had chosen this, but did she fully understand what she had chosen? "I don't regret being here," she said, her voice steady. "But I don't know if I'm cut out for this life." Dante took a step closer, his presence enveloping her. "You are, Emma," he said, his voice unwavering. "You're stronger than you realize. This world, my world, it's not easy. But you don't have to be perfect. You just have to trust that you'll find your place in it. And if you ever doubt yourself, I'll be here." Emma felt a surge of warmth in her chest. He had always been there for her, in his own way, and she wasn't sure how to feel about it. She had spent her entire life learning to rely on no one but herself. But now, with Dante, it was different. He was offering her something she had never known: security, trust, and a chance at something more. But there was still a part of her that felt trapped. "I want to be part of your world," she said softly, "but sometimes it feels like I'm just a pawn in your game." Dante's expression softened, and for a moment, she saw the man beneath the power. "You're not a pawn, Emma," he said quietly. "You're not a part of this because I want to control you. You're part of this because I believe in you. You're here because you have something that I need: your strength, your loyalty. That's why I trust you." His words hung in the air between them, and Emma could feel the weight of them pressing against her chest. He wasn't just speaking as the Mafia boss. He was speaking as someone who saw her, someone who believed in her potential. She had never known anyone like him. "I won't let you down," she said, her voice steady. Dante gave her a small, approving nod. "I know you won't. But remember, trust is a two-way street. I trust you, but I also expect you to trust me when things get difficult. There's always more at stake than you can see." Emma met his gaze, understanding the gravity of his words. This life, this world, was not easy. It was filled with danger, power struggles, and moments when everything could change in an instant. But Dante had made her a part of it, and with that came the responsibility to stand by him, no matter what. As she stood there, in the stillness of the night, Emma realized that she had come further than she ever imagined. She had entered this world with hesitation, unsure of what the future held. But now, standing beside Dante, she felt a sense of purpose. She was no longer just waiting for her life to unfold. She was making it happen. Dante's world had become hers, and she would fight to protect it, and him, with everything she had. "You've come a long way, Emma," Dante said, breaking the silence. "But the road ahead is still long, and it will get harder. Just remember, you're not alone in this." Emma nodded, her resolve hardening. She wasn't the same person who had walked into this world months ago. She had grown, learned, and found a strength she didn't know she had. And with Dante by her side, she would face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they stood there together, Emma knew that she had made the right choice. This life, this world, was hers now, and there was no turning back. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a part of something bigger, something powerful, and she was ready to face it all, whatever came her way. In this gripping dark romance, Emma finds herself caught in a world of luxury, power, and danger when she enters the life of the enigmatic Mafia boss, Dante. As she navigates this dangerous world, she struggles with her growing feelings for Dante while questioning her place in the ruthless empire he controls. The dark romance between Emma and Dante is fraught with tension, trust, and power dynamics that are not easily understood. As their relationship deepens, Emma is forced to confront her own fears, doubts, and desires. This dark romance explores the complexity of trust, loyalty, and the price of power. Can Emma truly embrace this dark world, or will it consume her? Dante's world is one of intrigue and danger, where every decision could be the difference between survival and destruction. In this dark romance, Emma's journey is one of self-discovery, as she uncovers the depth of her feelings for Dante and the challenges of living in a world where nothing is ever truly what it seems. With twists and turns that keep you on the edge of your seat, this dark romance will leave you questioning what true love and loyalty really mean in a world where power reigns supreme. Will Emma survive the dangers of Dante's world, or will she be consumed by it? Find out in this intense dark romance filled with passion, betrayal, and redemption.